Factorial is a new concept that most of you probably have not talked about or had a math teacher explain to you before, and it is very distinct in the way that it is written. Examples look like 3 factorial, it's not a negative sign, 5 factorial, 8 factorial divided by 3 factorial, 0 factorial. Those are all different types of things. So you know it's a factorial if you see an exclamation point after the number. That denotes factorial. In order to figure out the factorial, you take that number, multiply it times all the smaller numbers down to the number 1. If I take a look at the basic, most easiest one here on this list, I could take 3 factorial and I could rewrite it as 3 times 2 times 1, because 3 factorial means take that number 3, multiply it times all the smaller numbers. Got ahead of myself. All the smaller numbers down to 1. So the smaller number than 3 is 2, smaller than 2 is 1, and then my final answer is 3 times 2 times 1, which is 6. So 3 factorial is 6. If I take 5 factorial, we'll see how much bigger 5 factorial is than 3. So I've got 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, which is 20 times 3 times 2 times 1, which then is 60 times 2 times 1, which makes 120. So going from 3 factorial to 5 factorial, my number gets pretty darn big in comparison with 6. It's almost like when we were doing exponential growth. These things grow and get really big really fast. If I take a look at 8 factorial and 3 factorial, I'm going to write 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1 divided by 3 times 2 times 1. And when you write them out in this fashion, you can go ahead and cancel some things off. 3 cancels with 3, 2 cancels with 2, 1 cancels with 1, and all I have is 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4. It's a big number. I don't necessarily need to figure it out right now. If I wanted to go ahead and multiply it out, I could take my calculator, I could work on it on my own and take some time to do it. Another way of doing 8 factorial over 3 factorial would be to write 8 times 7 times 6 times 5 times 4 times 3 factorial all over 3 factorial, which might save me a little bit of time. I don't have to continue writing out the 3, the 2, and the 1 on the top or on the bottom. I can just take a look and I can go ahead and say, okay, 3 factorial cancels with 3 factorial. I don't need those necessarily anymore, and I get the same answer. When this comes in handy later on might be, for instance, if you have 12 factorial over 10 factorial times 2 factorial. 12 times 11 times 10 factorial over 10 factorial times 2 times 1. There's a nice little shortcut so that instead of having to continue writing all the numbers for 10 and then writing all the numbers for 10 again on the bottom, I can just shorten it and say, okay, 10 factorial cancels with 10 factorial. I need to go ahead and see, well, what can I do with a 12 and a 2? Well, 12 can be 6, 2 can be 1, and I now have 6 times 11, which is 66.